I want to spend most of my time talking about one pitch from this episode. Because just like other Adachi shows, Mix does the small moments really well. And I'll get to that, but first we should go in chronological order. Plot-wise, not much happens. There's 3 instances in this show where Mix tries the cliche anime things, but when Mix tries the cliche anime things, it recognizes how ridiculous all of them are. And using Minami as the narrator to point out their ridiculousness just gives this show a bit more edge and a bit more wisdom than other shows of this same ilk. At the beginning of the show, it does the whole wind-blowing skirts for men to peep trope. The show also does the people staring out windows and muttering nonsense joke a couple of times. And last but not least, you see the really well-informed chorus of fangirls that shows up a few times in Adachi stories, but gets poked at a little bit in this story. I really like all of these things because I like all of the cliches, first of all, and to know that the show knows how ridiculous these cliches are is a pretty fun thing to watch. We even see Adachi's character break the fourth wall, walking through the dugout in one of these scenes to show that, yeah, people know what's going on. A little bit of a smile, wink, and a nod to 30 years of manga writing. Maybe even 40 years now that I think about it. Anyway, first real plot point that happens is that Soichiro gets stuck in a diner with 3 fangirls, and he gets introduced to the Mita siblings, which, if you've watched Touch, is a direct parallel to the Nita siblings. The older Mita tells his sister that even though she's bragging about him, she's not really a fan of baseball, and what she should really do is watch him pitch in his upcoming practice game in order to appreciate what he does. And of course, in the upcoming practice game, his team Toshu is going up against our heroes at Meisei. Mita is going to start the game, but Doma is skeptical that he's going to bring out his A game against this pretty weak opponent. But Soichiro is not skeptical that he will, because as he says, his little sister is watching and he needs to impress her. If you're not following along in this story, then this line may go over your head, but what this show does really well, as well as showing the action, is putting a little subtext in the dialogue. And when Soichiro says that Mita is looking to impress his sister, what he's really saying is Doma is going out to impress his sister, essentially. The coach announces that Doma is going to pitch third in their rotation. Each pitcher is going to get 1 time through the lineup before being substituted out. And as it so happens, Doma's turn comes when there are bases loaded and no one out. And of course, on the first pitch, he induces a triple play. But the really impressive bit comes when Doma comes up to bat. It's his first at bat, and Soichiro has just flied out on 1 pitch, so he hasn't seen much of what the pitcher has for him. And it should be noted that this pitcher, Mita, is a national celebrity for bringing his team to the Koshien quarterfinals in the summer tournament last season. As a result, he is known by the fangirls in the diner, by all the players on Meisei, by all of the people in the crowd, and very crucially, by this umpire. So when Doma brings Mita to a 3-2 count, Mita puts a fastball, tries to paint the outside corner, but misses the plate. Doma recognizes this and he holds his swing. But the umpire, kind of starstruck by the celebrity of this pitcher, gives the pitcher the benefit of the doubt with a very generous strike call to strike Doma out. Doma goes back to the dugout where Soichiro tells him that Mita had put the pitch in, quote, your favorite spot, unquote. And at first this doesn't make sense because if the pitch was actually in Doma's favorite spot, then you would think that he would have swung and gotten a base hit. But what Soichiro meant was that the pitch was put in Doma's favorite spot as a pitcher, not as a batter. And recognizing the umpire's need to save face and consistently call that pitch a strike, Doma peppers that corner and strikes out the next 3 batters. This is a very subtle psychological trick that pitchers, catchers, and umpires will have to dance around, and this happens in every single baseball game that you see. But it's not really noticeable unless you've really watched or played the game extensively. And the cool thing that the show does is that it doesn't lay out the sequence of events that leads up to Doma peppering the corner with strikes. All that it does is lay out what happens, show you what happens, And if you are a baseball fan, it's something that you can notice and appreciate. And if you're not a baseball fan, you're not bogged down by needless explanations. It's just simply the next thing that happens in the story. This is something that Adachi shows do really well. I talk about this in the fourth part of my Touch review, where Adachi essentially spends a season setting up this one play that essentially makes the entire show worthwhile, in my opinion. Because other baseball shows like Major and Ace of Diamond are really trying to attract a crowd that doesn't necessarily know baseball. So even though these shows are technically superior to what Cross Game and Touch and H2 and Mix can do, the level of baseball itself is very rudimentary, honestly. And so when a show like Mix can quietly insert this little psychological detail about the game into its main story, that's the sort of detail that puts shows like Mix and Cross Game and Touch over the edge for me. This is what makes them great. This is what makes them worthwhile to me. And I want to point it out for the baseball fans, but I also really want to emphasize that even if you're not a baseball fan, it's not going to impede your enjoyment of the show. Basically, what I'm trying to say is this show does not forget the details. It does a very good job of showing its intellectual superiority, even though it doesn't necessarily have the resources to look like an Ace of Diamond or a Major, for example. Of the three shows this season, Ace of Diamond, Mix, and Cinderella 9, Mix is officially the best of the baseball shows in spring 2019. And I honestly don't see it relinquishing this throne, especially if it continues with this string of quality that we've been seeing the past few weeks. It's not a show if you want to get hype. It could be a show about romance if you're willing to wait a little bit. It's not really a show about baseball strategy, but everything it just does so well. And this is just such a gentle and refined and great show, and I can't recommend it highly enough.